Some Cheshire History and an Introduction to Artificial Intelligence by myself, Barry Emery. I'm going to start with the history portion by looking at Leland Park. This was created in 1940, and it was to commemorate the great event where Cheshire made a giant cheese known as the Mammoth cheese and sent it to Washington, D.C. in honor of Thomas Jefferson becoming president. So the arrows are pointing to, first of all, the blue arrow to a giant tree that was taken down and pretty much hid the monument from Church Street. And then the top of the monument had been vandalized quite a many years ago, and the screw was broken off. Now you can see the other trees on the left. And I have to tell you that I got a phone call in Florida a couple years ago from a gentleman in Cheshire saying he wanted to do something really special for the town. And when I got back into Cheshire, a couple of us got together and discussed with him a project, and we decided on fixing up Leland Park. This gentleman was Ray Peralt, and he contributed a sizable sum towards the restoration of this park. The town added money, and the Lions Club also donated some money, and the park has now been totally renovated. During the process, trees were cut down, the roots were dug up, and these were damaging the foundation of the monument, as well as being a danger if a storm were to knock them down or knock a limb down and crushing the monument. You can see how the roots had invaded the base of the monument there. So not only were the trees removed and the stumps ground down, but the monument itself was restored. Notice the arrow on the upper left pointing to the new section of the screw that was cast and then added. And now the park looks so much nicer with new plantings, new stonework, a new path, a bench donated by the Lions Club, and I think the town can be very proud the way it has now been restored. Now the land that the park was the home of Henry Bowen's Feed and Grain Store. And this is an old picture of that store, and you'll notice it has a lightning rod on the roof. And unfortunately, that rod did its job, and the lightning struck, and a fire started, and the store burned totally to the ground, March 19th, 1918. Henry Bowen had several businesses in town. Not only did he have this store, but he also had a mill over on Richardson Street. He lived in this house. This house is one of the oldest houses in town. It was built, I think, by E.D. Foster, and Bowen bought it and moved in. He had lived over the store for a while until he bought this house. And I don't know exactly when he bought it. Maybe after the store burned down, he moved into this home. It's very nicely constructed inside. I'll show you a couple of pictures. The hardwood floor is gorgeous, and the house has several stained glass windows. This is the original stained glass on the front door. Now Bowen's son lived here. His name was Eugene Bowen. He was the oldest man in town when he died at the age of 96. And I'm mentioning him because he was very instrumental in getting the cheese press monument created. He was also instrumental in getting several other monuments in town. He was very generous to his alma mater, Tufts University, and there is a gate that is known as the Bowen's Gate, made from his donations. He was part of the committee that was organized to create the Stafford Hill Monument. Notice there was a man from North Adams, a man from Adams, Eugene Bowen from Cheshire, and a man from Dalton. So this was a monument to the Berkshire men who fought in the American Revolution. This was constructed and dedicated in 1927. So in a couple of years, we're going to have the 100th anniversary of the dedication of this monument. Now, Eugene Bowen is the gentleman dressed in period costume there. Another monument that he was involved in was this monument here on the North Street Cemetery. It commemorates the men that fought in the American Revolution from northern Berkshires. And you can see the base plaque has his name on it, and he donated the funds for this monument. Now, his mother's maiden name was Buckland. So part of the reason for this monument, I think, was to commemorate the Buckland patriot, John Buckland, who fought in the American Revolution. His name is mentioned on that plaque, along with several others. So back to the Leland Park, the plaque of Leland was also presented by Eugene Buckland, and in very, very small print down in the lower left-hand corner, it is inscribed like this: presented by Eugene Buckland Bowen. Now, there's two myths regarding the Mammoth Cheese event that I'd like to discuss. The first one is, why is it called the Mammoth Cheese? It's not for the reason that everyone thinks. Jefferson's opponents thought he was wasting money on digging up mammoth bones. Jefferson was quite interested in scientific research, and he dedicated federal funds for this project, and newspapers around the country started labeling him the Mammoth President as sort of a derogatory term because he was spending money on this foolish enterprise. So, when the cheese was delivered to him, it became known as Mammoth's cheese. It did not mean huge. It meant this is a cheese given to the Mammoth President. And the adjective mammoth, in the sense of huge, first appeared in American English in 1802, and it's attested in derogatory newspaper accounts of the Cheshire Mammoth cheese. So, very soon after that, it just became an adjective to mean very large or huge. Another myth has to do with the votes for President Jefferson. Now, Cheshire loved Jefferson, so one of the myths, and it's written on the plaque, is that everyone voted for him. But that's a myth. I asked AI, how many votes did Jefferson get in the Cheshire, Massachusetts 1800 election? And I had searched our archives looking for the tally of the ballot, and I found a tally for congressmen and for representatives, but I did not find a vote for president. Here's why. In the 1800 election, Massachusetts did not have a popular vote for president. Instead, the state legislature chose the electors, who then cast their votes unanimously for John Adams in the Electoral College. John Adams, of course, being from Massachusetts. Therefore, Thomas Jefferson received 0 votes from Massachusetts citizens, including Cheshire. And there were several states that did this procedure for the electors. Now, the cheese was made just about in this location. It's the former site of Captain Daniel Brown's home. It's across from the fire station, and now it's an empty lot with a Welcome to Cheshire sign. The home was one of the grandest homes in northern Berkshire, built in 1797. And after Captain Brown died, it became a local inn. There used to be a sign on the property of the home telling you that this was the location where the great cheese was made. Now, the cheese was not taken to Hudson, New York, but it was taken to the Hudson. And they brought it there to put it on a barge and send it down to New York City. They started the trip in late November after the first good-sized snowfall, when they could use a sled pulled by oxen. The house was 44 by 42 feet. And notice it has a mansard roof. This was a type of architecture that was created in Paris, France, and it eliminated some of the taxes on the home because the roof story was never taxed. And yet in this architectural style, you could have a third story or a fourth story on your for your roof that didn't get taxed but yet had space like all the other stories. Unfortunately, the house became in disrepair. At the time it was torn down, it had been known as Tiffany Green's, and in 2013 it was demolished. So the next topic, what was the Cheshire Camel? I have some old artifacts from the Cheshire Camel, and this one tells you that it was a restaurant halfway between Pittsfield and North Adams. It was actually on Route 8, and it was just north of the Dollar General. A couple other artifacts. And I had been looking for years for a photograph to add to our archive, and I could never find one. And finally, just this year, a former resident, Stephanie Leonard, who used to live behind the bank, her father, Steve Leonard, was an avid photographer, and she found one of his photographs and sent it to me. And this was it. Looks like it was almost a full moon that night, and I like the old car parked out in front. If anyone has another photograph of maybe the inside, I'd love to add it to our archive. Now, unfortunately, it burned down. This newspaper article from Monday, January 23rd, 1938, talks about a complete loss. The restaurant was owned by Harry Chaput at the time. Now, the foundation was not destroyed, and a house was built upon it, and that's what stands there today. The Boyers live in that house. And I'm creating this talk in July of 2025. Now, the Cheshire Historical Commission had a lot of artifacts that were stored above the police station, which is the former fire station, and it wasn't accessible. And when the town hall offices were moved to the former school, the town administrators graciously gave the former selectman's office for use of the Historical Commission. And just recently, we've started to add photographs and artifacts and displays in this room. And we'd like to have it open to the public, maybe a couple times, a couple days a month. And we haven't set a schedule yet, but look forward to that. Now, also in the back room, the town safe. We don't have access to it yet, but soon I think we will, and we'll be using it to store some of the artifacts. But the safe itself is an artifact, created in 1898 when the town hall was constructed. And you'll notice that the name Cheshire has been misspelled on that safe ever since. So in the back room, Sandra Sloan has created a very nice display honoring the veterans of Cheshire. And when you come into this area, be sure and check out that display in the back room. Next topic, something about the front of the town hall. Actually, can you guess the date of this photograph? Well, there's two clues that kind of narrow it down. One is the town hall was built in 1898, and the other is there's no trolley tracks. And the trolley tracks came to Cheshire in 1902. So this photograph must have been taken sometime between 1898 and 1902. Notice the original fountain. I love the trees lining Church Street and Depot Street. The fountain was constructed and dedicated in 1914. Mrs. Sarah Brown Hall Johnston of Washington, D.C., and she was a descendant of Captain Daniel Brown. Notice in the right photograph, you have a drinking fountain for people in the middle, and on the bottom is a fountain for dogs. And on the back here, this plaque talks about her being a descendant. On the plaque, there is some graffiti. I noticed when I zoomed in that somebody had put some initials. It looks like RC something or other, and then was here. I like the emblem for the Daughters of the American Revolution. And when I zoomed in, you can see there's 13 stars and the words written around. Now, the front of the fountain had a giant watering hole for horses. And we use it as a planter today. And there's something missing. What's missing is behind the green shoots of that plant, and it was another plaque that used to be on the granite. And it was vandalized and torn off. I'm not sure exactly when, but it was badly bent, and the studs holding it to the stone were broken off. It had been vandalized earlier when someone started a fire inside that trough, and the stone was cracked from the heat. And you can see above the red flowers, the plaque is not there. This photograph's from 2018. I believe the plaque has been missing for over a decade. One reason I don't think many people noticed it is because the lovely flowers hid the location. But here's a photograph showing it. And I came across the plaque when I was going through the archives up over the police station. This was leaning up against the wall in the corner in memory of the Berkshire yeomen who served in the War of Independence: Captain Jabez Hall, Captain Calvin Hall, Captain Joseph Barnes, and Captain Daniel Brown. And it gives the dates for when they lived. And you can see, when I found the plaque, I brought it down to the stone. And when I held it up against the granite, you could see how badly it had been bent when they pried it off. I brought it to Berkshire Monuments up in North Adams and asked the gentleman there, I've forgotten his name, if he would help straighten it out. And he did a wonderful job. And the town workers put it back on the monument, on the fountain, and there it is today. Now it's interesting that the 4 men who are listed here on this monument did not live in Cheshire during the Revolution. They all lived in Lanesborough. So it's kind of interesting that the monument, the fountain, and these plaques got put in Cheshire. And I think the main reason is that the lady who donated it was a descendant of Captain Daniel Brown, and he eventually did move to Cheshire and lived in that house that we had talked about earlier, across from the fire station. When Cheshire became a town, by the way, we took property from several neighboring towns. The gray area on the left is Lanesborough, and you can see by the outline of Cheshire in red that we took quite a sizable chunk of Lanesborough into Cheshire's boundary. Some of Windsor, some of New Ashford in the upper left, and the original New Providence, which was Stafford Hill, had become part of Adams, and it then was incorporated into the new town of Cheshire. And the arrow points to the town hall location. So you can see that just about in the center of our town. Okay, moving on. Another interesting feature of made out of stone in Cheshire is the trolley bridge. And this bridge, this photograph was taken in 1902 when the trolley line was first constructed going from Adams into Cheshire. Now, when I saw this postcard, I thought, well, let's go down and find a piece of that old bridge. Maybe there's some rubble there, and I'd like to put it into the Cheshire archive. And when I drove down there, I parked, and son of a gun, if I wasn't parked right on top of the bridge. I didn't know it still existed. And when I gave a talk back in around 2010, I asked a group of 80 people in the room how many people knew the bridge was there, and only a handful of hands were raised. So most people in town, even today, don't realize what a wonderful old Keystone Arch stone bridge we have. This is the oldest photograph I have of the bridge. And this is the original bridge. It had been widened when the trolleys tracks were put in. So it was doubled in size in 1901. But here we have a bridge that's 16 feet wide with wooden logs as rails, and this home right there on the corner. Now I tried to zoom in to see what the sign said, and the top sign says, "Lead in all points, C.C. Legate, 1 Price Clothier in Adams." And the bottom sign I still couldn't read, but one of the words on there is furs. You'll notice above the house is a road going up to West Mountain Road, or West Road, and that road is no longer there. Another old picture of the bridge. This one I tried to highlight the bridge itself. Again, this is the original bridge built in 1830 when they were creating and widening the road, improving the road from Cheshire to Adams. This photograph was taken in 1890. The bridge was widened again in 1901. So this is one of the earliest photographs of a trolley going over the new widened bridge. And you'll notice the house is still there to the right. The bridge is in the location known as Cheshire Harbor. And I can date this particular postcard because of two clues again. One is the trolley itself is there, so we know it's after 1902. And the other is the writing on the postcard is in the front. And prior to 1907, you had to write on the front of the postcard. You were not allowed to write on the address side. So we know this postcard is from sometime before 1907. And that trolley would be going up Eastview Drive. 40 minutes, starting now. Another more modern picture of the bridge, this one taken when I first discovered it. And underneath the bridge, you can see where the old 1830 portion and the new 1901 portion came together. And this little paragraph tells you the wooden structure necessary to build the arch is done, and the new part of the stonework is started. The old arch will have to be raised about 5 feet. So on the right of that picture, you'll see some stonework that has raised the arch 5 feet. So the original part of the bridge is on the upstream side, and the new part on the downstream. And underneath the bridge, you can see where the two things come together by looking at the ceiling. There's the location. The State Police Barracks would be in the upper left. You come down the new Route 8, and you turn onto Reservoir Road, and very quickly take a right, and you'll be parked on the bridge. Of course, Route 8 was not in that current location. You used to come over Eastview Drive. You used to make a sharp turn over the bridge and then continue down into Adams. And if you go to look at that location, you can still see some of the old guardrails from that road. And it came back out just about where the house is down in the lower center of the photograph. There's some boats stored along next to that house. All right, let's go to the second half of this talk and do the introduction to AI. And the first thing I wanted to show you is I asked AI to make a logo for my talk, something that I could put on a flyer and use to advertise. And so I asked AI to create a logo, and here's what it came up with. It asked me a question. I'd be happy to design a logo, but it wanted some more information. What's the title or theme? What kind of tone do you want? What kind of colors? And number 4, do you want any text? Well, I just told it to use points number 2 and 3. And this is what it came up with. It told me that it was processing the image, and a lot of people were doing that at the moment, so it might take a while. And it turned out that it took about 4 minutes. Don't know if you like it or not, but I wanted something a little different. And so I asked AI to make another, and I got the one on the left. And then I asked it to dial up its imagination and get something more dynamic. And I came up with this one. And finally, I said, or it's actually said, would you like something that a digital mind garden sounds wonderful? And I said, sure. And this is what it came up with. Now, all of these took a couple of minutes, and they were all created using one of the platforms we're going to talk about for artificial intelligence called ChatGPT. There's another one we're going to talk about called Google Gemini, and this is the logo it came up with. Copilot, had come up with this one. It wasn't ChatGPT, it was Copilot. And then ChatGPT had come up with that original one. And these are the three general purpose AI platforms that you can use either on your phone or your computer. And we'll talk about each one. So, who's used AI in the audience? Well, I have a feeling without you raising your hand that almost all of you have, because AI is used to analyze your speech on an awful lot of telephone menu systems. AI is the thing that you chat with on many web pages. AI is the thing that creates the fraud alerts from your credit cards telling you that, are asking you, did you buy a jet ski in Oman? AI is very good at looking for unusual patterns. AI is used to create the ad choices that you see sometimes at the top of the screen when you're browsing on the internet. AI is used to detect the human form on some security cameras. AI is used for some of the mapping features in your car and on your phone. And finally, Siri and Alexa and some of your Google searches are using AI. Now, what is AI? Well, the term AI was coined in 1950 when computers were being taught to talk and hold a conversation. And it stands for artificial intelligence. There's a man, Alan Turing, who was very instrumental at the time, and he created something called the Turing test. He proposed that a computer would be deemed intelligent when in a conversation you could not tell whether it was a machine or a human that you were talking to. And back then, the conversation would have been held with text. You typed, and then the computer typed back to you. But then the idea came about, instead of machines having a consciousness, we stopped thinking of it as being alive, and we thought of intelligence as now being defined in terms of behavior. So scientists and engineers stopped trying to give the machine a consciousness, but instead tried to give it a behavior that made it mimic humans. And the quest for artificial intelligence had truly begun. Artificial intelligence, when a computer appears to think as a person. It can make decisions. It can understand speech. It can create new thoughts. And like we saw before, new pictures, diagrams. It can find patterns. Now, I'm not going to get very detailed in my introduction here tonight, but believe me, artificial intelligence is playing a huge role already in many manufacturing and business applications. Now, the big players in AI are some of these familiar and rich companies that I know you've heard of: Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Apple, and one you may not have heard of called OpenAI. And OpenAI is actually one of the leaders in this artificial intelligence race. Now, there's another company that I doubt you've heard of, and that's called NVIDIA. And this is a company that makes computer chips. It doesn't have an AI platform for you to use, but it is used to create those platforms. And recently, in July, a news alert: NVIDIA beats Apple and Microsoft to become the world's first $4 trillion public company. So it's literally one of the richest companies, if not the richest in the world. And it's a U.S. chip maker, publicly traded, made such a huge profit in this year thanks to powering artificial intelligence. Here's what some of these artificial intelligent factories or places look like. This is a ChatGPT facility. I think it's interesting to note that how big it is. It looks like some of our automobile factories. They're so large. And this one happens to be located in a rather rural setting, as you can see. I believe this one is in England, actually. Many of these AI companies have multiple facilities around the world. Google's new AI facility, which they invested $1 billion in, is going to look like this. Not sure where it's located. And here's one that Microsoft has built, and it's a $3 billion investment. Again, I think it's interesting about the rural location that they chose. And here's Amazon's AI facility. So what's inside these humongous buildings, these mammoth buildings? Well, they're filled with computers, rows and rows and rows of computers. Not just the kind of computer you have at home, but huge, most powerful computers in the world. Here's another inside photograph. Now, these computer banks require huge amounts of electricity, not only for the computers, but for the air conditioning units that keep them, the buildings cool. And so one of the articles I read talked about the carbon dioxide levels that AI may be adding. And yes, it does add carbon dioxide to our atmosphere. AI computer systems and the AC units to keep them cool use huge amounts of electricity. And of course, that electricity has to be generated somehow. AI expends a lot of energy being polite, especially if the user is polite, saying please and thank you. But this just makes their responses even longer, expending more energy to generate each word. And I mention that because, again, you're going to think when you use AI that you're communicating with some intelligent being, but you're not. You're communicating with a machine that does not have feelings, and therefore there's no reason for you to be polite and say thank you or please. You're just adding to the carbon dioxide levels. So how much energy do they use? Well, the energy needed for AI to say you are welcome is the amount of power used for a 1-watt LED light bulb for 1 to 10 seconds, or the amount of energy for a human to take a step. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but millions and millions of people all day long around the world are using these AI platforms. So that's when the amount of energy starts to add up. Here's another example. AI created this picture of a spoon. How much energy is needed to draw this picture? Well, it would be the amount of energy to run a 100-watt light bulb for about 5 seconds. Again, doesn't sound like a lot, but it is multiplied by millions each minute. So what can AI do for you? What can these artificial intelligence platforms do for the average person? Well, I've used it to write a poem. I've used it to make a drawing. You can use it to help with a recipe. Why is my banana bread not being fully cooked on the inside? You can ask it to give you medical advice. You can ask it to create a thesis. Write a 2,000-word thesis on the history of the Egyptian pyramids. And within a few seconds, you'll have that thesis. It can play a card game. It can play checkers or chess against you. It can do family research. It can write a computer program. And it can do speech recognition. Now, all of this is a lot different than a Google search. This is going to be much more complicated and much more in-depth. For example, speech recognition. If you have one of the newer versions of Word, if you hit the Windows key on your keyboard and an H at the same time, this little menu will pop up. And if you hit the microphone, you can now talk and it will type your words for you. And believe me, it's very, very accurate. Now, if you don't have Word, but you're using maybe Google's Docs, then you hit Control, Shift, and S at the same time. And you can talk to your computer and it will type the words for you. And of course, you know that your iPhone can do the same thing if you tell it to by hitting the microphone. So speech recognition has become a real popular aspect of artificial intelligence. Now, what are they used for? And which ones can you use free? Well, I've already mentioned the three, and you may have to create a free account using your email address. But Copilot, which is run or created by OpenAI, ChatGPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. That's quite a mouthful. And it has another address you can use known as chatgpt.ai. And you'll get two different looks from each of those websites. The second one, this one, will give you a comprehensive list of various AI platforms that you can choose to use. And then you have Google's Gemini. And you can get to that by just typing google.com/Gemini or something shorter like google.ai. Now, when you try to use Copilot on a Windows machine, you already have an icon at the bottom of the screen. You can just click on that icon that the arrow is pointing to. And it will give you a choice. You can ask for a quick response, a deep thinking response, or a deep research. Now, the first two are free. The third one requires you to get a paid account, I believe. And when you hit it, it will be polite. Good morning. What can I help you with today? I did the quick response. And the question I asked is, what is Cheshire, Mass most known for? And here are the answer I got. And this was instant. Cheshire, Mass, famously known for its mammoth cheese. Gives you a little history about it. Goes on to add scenic beauty, historic industry, community spirit, and the cobbles. Now, I asked it what it was most known for. And it gave me more than one answer, but the first answer, I assume, is what it's most known for. I asked the Copilot to think a little deeper and give me the answer again, and this was the response. Again, the mammoth cheese is listed first. It gave me a little more detail about the cheese, talked about our scenic gateway to the Berkshires, and it talked about our early industry, and you've got some detail there about some of the things we used to have here in Cheshire. So Google was asked the same question. Google's Gemini, not Google, but Google's Gemini. It's AI version. And here's what it came up with. Cheshire, Massachusetts is most known for a few key things. The mammoth cheese, perhaps the most unique and historically significant claim to fame, is the mammoth cheese presented to Thomas Jefferson. And then it gives you some more details about it. And this was the only thing it came up with. Now, I asked AI to help with some remedies for a headache. And I have been suffering from headaches from time to time, and there's a couple of things here that I'd never tried. Thank you for letting me know. Nausea with a headache, especially over one eye, does raise the possibility of migraine. Migraines often cause throbbing or pulsating pain, nausea, vomiting, sensitivity to light, sounds, and smells. And this is what might help. And these are things I've tried. The one I have never tried is to sip water slowly. Now, there is a caution. Get medical help immediately. And you wouldn't want to trust AI to completely diagnose some serious ailment. AI is not foolproof. It does make mistakes. I'll show you one in just a moment. I asked AI to create a crest for the Cheshire, Massachusetts. Again, starting with Copilot. And this is what it came up with. Didn't take very long. This was about a 2-minute job. It's got the oxen bringing the cheese. I think it kind of messed up. It put the oxen on top of the cart and the cheese underneath. And then a mountain, which I assume is Mount Greylock, and look like a river. I'm not sure what the bell is all about, but it does have the correct date of our founding, and we were industrious. So it wasn't perfect. So I asked Google Gemini for one, and this is what it came up with. And I thought it pretty clever. It's, again, got the mammoth cheese highlighted. It's got the old rail trail and the mountain. It's got sort of a rural look to it. The one I like the best is this one. This was another one that I asked Copilot to come up with. And I like it much better. It gives us the mammoth cheese. It gives us the rural nature of our community. It shows the Keystone covered bridge. And it shows just a nice logo with Cheshire, Massachusetts. I think the town ought to adopt this. And these are all unique. These are not things that someone else has created and are copyrighted somewhere. So if the Cheshire decided to use this, there'd be no infringement of copyright involved. So something else they can do. I was a computer science teacher, and I taught computer programming, and I was intrigued by the fact that these AI programs can write computer programs so quickly and so correctly. Because writing a computer program is initially the first step, but then it could take hours to debug it and find all the hidden errors in it. And so I asked it to write a hangman program, and within 2 seconds, it had the program written. On the right is the actual code, and I couldn't fit the whole thing on the screen, so you'll notice the last line is line 440, so it's pretty long. It's written in the type of language that you could use on a website. And the left side of the screen shows you what it would look like on the website if you were to run this program. And I started guessing. I only guessed one letter, but I think I know the word. I never did finish the game. I think the word might be computer. I'll never know. So some humorous things that have become a trend in AI is creating these people that aren't real and having them talk to you. And here's one that I'm going to play for you.
Do you want to know a cool trick?
A cool trick. I'm sure it's not cool, but I'll listen.
Okay, I want you to think of a number. It doesn't matter what number, but you need to think of one number.
Any number in the world.
Yes.
One number.
Yes.
Any number.
Yes.
Okay, I got a number.
Okay, I want you to double the number.
Double the number?
Yes. You got it?
No, I picked a very large number.
Looks pretty realistic,
Take your
doesn't
time,
it?
Then.
All right, it's doubled.
Okay, now I would like for you to add 6 to your doubled number.
Add 6? All right, got it.
Now, I want you to take that number and divide it in half.
It's divided in half.
Okay. Now, I want you to subtract your original number from your new number.
Okay.
Was your answer 3?
No, you got it wrong.
Then your math is wrong.
So on YouTube, you can find hundreds of these videos, each one different, usually with these two children, but there are other children or people that are also AI generated. In fact, I was writing a children's book. And
do you want to know a cool trick?
before I get to that, let me tell you.
Welcome to The Whole Story. I'm Anderson Cooper. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is an incredibly powerful technology which may change many aspects of our lives. The CEO of Google's parent company, Alphabet, which has invested heavily in it, recently said AI's impact could be more profound than electricity or even fire. But many worry about what that impact might turn out to be. Could AI one day replace humans? And if so, how might that happen? We've already seen some service-based and manufacturing jobs turn to AI in a big way. But what about other industries? Can AI replace journalists or news anchors? Perhaps it already has. Because what you just saw and heard a moment ago was not actually me. This is me, Anderson Cooper. And I am an AI-generated Anderson Cooper. That wasn't my real voice, and I never spoke the words you just heard.
So that's kind of scary, because how are we going to know what's real and what isn't? I hope people a lot smarter than me are working on that problem. I hope AI ends up being good for mankind, and it's going to take some pretty smart people to make that happen. AI could be dangerous. Machines do not know, they just do. What if they disobeyed? Suppose your car engine knew it was wearing out because gauges showed the temperature and oil consumption was increasing. What if it refuses to go anywhere except to a service center? The notion of our machines revolting has been around for a long time. In 1968, a machine was shown to be disobeying. I'm sure you'll recognize this.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
Now, I started to mention earlier that I hope some smart people are working on this issue. Okay, so I've written a lot of books on Cheshire's history, but recently I wrote a children's book teaching children how to count using a rhyme. And I'm not an artist, but yet I wanted a lot of images in this book that would be appealing to children. And I asked AI to create them for me. And this is the image that it created for my front cover. All I did is ask it for an image, colorful image, showing some children surrounded by digits. This is the one I chose after it made several different variations. The back cover has a couple of images on it as well that I asked AI to produce. The new counting rhyme, it's a rhyme with a cute story, and it is illustrated here with colorful pictures that are easy for young children to recognize. Be sure to say and read each number when it appears on a page, and your child will soon learn to count to 10, as well as recognize numbers, some simple words, and rhymes that match the colorful pictures. And it was my granddaughters and I that worked on this rhyme, so I had to give them credit here. Now, in the book, I use these large digits, and I had created some on my own using Word. This is one that I created, and it was a very tedious task, and I wasn't real happy with the result. So I asked AI to come up with some digits. This is one. Much more interesting than mine. However, I didn't like some of the others that it came up with in the same vein. So I asked for some other options, and these are the ones I ended up using. And you'll notice I kept my number 3 there so that at least something in the book was drawn and created by me besides the actual rhyming poem. I wanted to have a place in the book, several places actually, where children had to hunt for numbers, and I asked AI to give me a picture of children at a picnic. And then I went ahead and hid the numbers within the picture. So I couldn't have written this book without AI's help. So those are some fun things AI can do for you. Where's the beef, though? If this is such an important item, what else can it do that is going to help mankind? And so I'm going to show you just one aspect, because I promised I wouldn't be too technical. AI has been trained to read X-rays, and they can diagnose future cancer spots in the lungs as good, if not better, than doctors. So if you have a lung X-ray and it's passed through the AI platform to analyze, it can maybe spot potential cancerous areas. 35 out of 37 conditions, 94% accuracy when benchmarked against senior clinician reports. Now, another thing AI has been doing is mapping protein structures. Proteins, we have thousands and thousands of them within our body. Each one does a particular thing. And the structure of the protein is what determines what its function is going to be. And there are millions and millions of proteins in the world itself. And scientists have been trying to learn the structure of these proteins. And maybe they could then use them in medical applications. The problem has been that to come up with the three-dimensional shape of a protein is very difficult. Now, I asked AI to come up with one, and this is the one it gave me. They're made up of amino acids, and they're just very complicated shapes. We've been trying to learn the shape of proteins in the past by using X-rays. But when we take an X-ray, all you get is a one-dimensional shadow. And it's been very difficult from that shadow to determine what the actual three-dimensional shape is. And it's that shape that's important to scientists. Here's what AI determined was the shape that caused this shadow. And since they've been using AI, they've been able to get the three-dimensional images of millions of proteins. Someday they may be able to develop a protein that will be structured to go and fight one particular type of cancer, for example. All right, thank you for watching this presentation. The little poem on the left was written by AI. And recently, a news article talked about getting addicted to AI. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.